end. Okay, we're recording now and we're going to get started. This is the Alumni Masterclass, Using Your Strengths at Work. And tonight, I want to get us started just by inviting you to participate in a quick poll. So I'm going to launch the poll now. If you would take the time to respond, I just want to get an understanding of how many of you have done the Clifton Strengths Assessment. It's not necessary at all for this workshop, but it is helpful for me to know how many of you have already taken it. So I appreciate that you guys are participating in this. We'll just give it a couple more seconds and I can get a sense of where we're starting from. Okay, we're going to end this poll, and I can see that there's about a third of you who have done the assessment and another 2/3 who have not yet done it. Again, not a big deal at all. It just gives me a sense of where we're starting from. Okay, so let's dive in terms of what we're going to cover this evening. We're going to talk about what is the Clifton Strengths Assessment. So for those of you that have already done it, you'll be familiar with some of the content that I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about why focus on strengths. We're going to look at what is the strengths-based approach to professional and personal development. Quite frankly, it can be used in any part of your life. We're going to talk about the difference between strengths and skills. Oftentimes people talk about them interchangeably, but in the Gallup world, the Gallup is the organization that created the Clifton Strengths Assessment. Strengths and skills are quite different things, and they're actually complementary though. So we'll talk about that difference and we'll dive into that a little bit. And we'll take a few minutes to talk about how do you spot your strengths? Especially for those of you who have not done the assessment yet, there'll be some exercises and some ways for you to start paying attention to what are those things that you are naturally good at, do naturally well, or get great satisfaction from. So we'll talk about how to spot your strengths, and then we're going to look at strategies to build and apply your strengths. So how can you keep building on those once you've identified them? So those are the 6 things we're going to cover tonight. And let's go ahead and get started. So you'll see a quote here on the screen from Albert Einstein. This is actually one of my favorite quotes. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And, the heart of this quote is just that, everybody has talent. We all have talent. And in the words of Clifton Strengths, talent is really just our innate ways of being, thinking, and behaving. And talent can be honed and built into strengths by practicing, by building our knowledge and gaining skills that help us capitalize on that talent. And when you take the time to really know and understand your own talents and also recognize the talents and strengths that others bring to the table, then everybody wins. But it's in relation to this quote, when we try to evaluate or judge people for the talents that they don't possess, we can make people feel bad and make them feel, less likely to engage at work, because we're judging them by our own strengths versus acknowledging and recognizing what they're bringing to the table. So the Clifton Strengths Assessment, the assessment is basically a series of choices that you're going to make. It's timed choices. I think it's 20 seconds that you have to answer, to select one choice from a pair of choices as you go through this assessment. And once you get your results, the results are split into 4 domains that you can see here on the screen. So the 4 domains of strengths, the 4 domains of talent are executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. And so there are 34 talents in total, and they each fit it within one of these domains. Now, oftentimes people say, well, when I get my results, when I see my strengths, is it important that I have strengths in all 4 of these domains? And the short answer is no. It is not necessarily necessary at all for an individual to be as a lot of people would say, well-rounded. But it is necessary for teams. And so that's where understanding the domains of your strengths becomes important, so that you can make sure as a team you have people that can contribute in all four of these domains. You have people who have executing talents that can make things happen, who have strategic thinking talents that can really dive in and identify the big picture and look at how things fit together. People with influencing talents in terms of being able to take charge and make sure that the right messages are being sent and heard. And then the relationship building talents. And so those are people, obviously, who are great at building strong relationships, either within the team, across the organization, with clients, with customers. So while it's not important for you as an individual, to necessarily have themes across all four of these domains, it is important for teams. What's most important for you as an individual is to understand exactly what your strengths are. So you can see here that I mentioned that there are 34 strengths within the Clifton Strengths Assessment. You can see them here separated by the 4 domains. So you've got all 34. There are definitions that you can find on the Gallup site for all of these. You can see I've listed my top 5 strengths here: strategic, relator, responsibility, self-assurance, and ideation. And so when you take the assessment, you get some really interesting insights into each of these talents. Now, there are 2 ways to take the assessment. You can either choose to just get your top 5, in which case you'd see, what I've highlighted for you here in terms of my top 5 talents. You can also do the full 34, so that you can see all 34 of your talents in order. Now, I will tell you that the tendency for a lot of people when they do the full 34 is to immediately look at the bottom and say, oh, what am I not good at? And that is the exact opposite of the Clifton Strengths approach to personal and professional development. And we'll get into that in a minute. So really what Clifton Strengths is all about is focusing in on, as they say, what's right with people versus what's wrong with people. And you'll find that in the Gallup research, now I think it's at this point over 22 million people who have taken this assessment. And the things, the talents, the strengths that make up your top 5 are things that you're going to be better at than the next 10,000 people you meet. So I'm going to say that again. The talents, the strengths that make up your top 5 are strengths that you are going to be better at than the next 10,000 people you meet. Now, to take it a step further and look at your strengths in order of intensity. So for instance, if we go back a slide and look at my top 5, those are in order of intensity. So my number 1 talent is strategic. My number 2 is relator. My number 3 is responsibility. My number 4 is self-assurance. And my number 5 is ideation. And so when you look at those in order of intensity, Gallup has found that the odds of someone having the same top 5 themes as you in the same order as you is 1 in 33.4 million. So again, the odds of someone having the same top 5 in the same order is about 1 in 33 million. So that makes you pretty unique. And it really helps you see that you have a lot to bring to your community, to your organization, to your personal relationships. And in addition, aside from understanding what makes you unique, part of the reason there's a lot of reasons really that we focus on strengths. People say, well, why should I even care about this? And it matters both to you as an individual, as well as what you can bring to your team and to your organization. So you can see here that people who focus on using their strengths are 6 times as likely to be engaged in their jobs. They're 3 times more likely to report having an excellent quality of life. And they're 7.8% more productive in their job. So, aren't these all things that every single one of us would want? Imagine feeling more engaged in your job. Imagine being able to say, yeah, I have a really excellent quality of life and being more productive. And then to add on top of that, here are a few more reasons that it's important to focus on strengths, because people who have the opportunity to use their strengths at work, they look forward to going to work more than others. They have more positive than negative interactions with coworkers. They treat their customers best. They tell their friends they work for a great company. They achieve more on a daily basis. And they have more positive, creative, and innovative moments. So again, things that we really all want. And if you have the opportunity to apply your strengths every day, to use your strengths every day in what you're doing at work, Gallup finds that these things are the results of actively putting your strengths into practice. And so that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about, is that oftentimes we don't have to switch jobs in order to do that. It's just a matter of knowing and understanding our strengths so that we can understand how to apply them in the jobs that we're already in. Using your strengths doesn't necessarily require that you change career paths, that you get a new job, that you leave an organization. You can do it in the job that you're in. So I mentioned the strengths-based approach to improvement. So let's talk about that a little bit. And again, it's professional improvement, it's personal improvement. It can apply to almost any part of your life. The idea behind strengths-based work is that we should focus on building our strengths and managing our weaknesses versus simply trying to improve our weaknesses. So um, it doesn't mean that we ignore our weaknesses. It just means that we learn how to manage around them. So, instead of, for instance, me thinking about how do I change the fact that I'm not always very good about emotionally engaging people. I could spend a whole lot of time going, okay, how do I build up the capacity, my empathic capacities? How do I build that up? But instead, what the strengths-based approach is, it says, let's look at what you already do well, and figure out how to use that to do what you need to do. So in the case for me, I mentioned to you that relator is my number 2 strength. And so what I can do in that kind of situation is I can focus in on how do I use my relator talents? How do I use my relator strengths to connect with people in a different way that allows the emotional connection to happen in a different way? And so that's really what the strengths-based approach is all about. Instead of saying, all right, here are my weaknesses and developing this whole improvement plan, it's what am I really good at? And how do I develop those so that I can manage the areas that I'm not so good at? And that's really the whole strengths-based approach to improvement. So let's talk about, I mentioned strengths versus skills. And I mentioned earlier that strengths are innate. They are the ability, this is Gallup's definition, the ability to provide consistent, near perfect performance in a specific task. And based on Gallup's research, again, these are innate. These are things that we naturally do well, as opposed to skills, which are things that you're good at, things that they are learned behaviors, the basic ability to move through the fundamental steps of a task. So let's look at some examples. So think about, for instance, a basketball player. The difference between strengths and skills for a basketball player, skills might be their dribbling abilities. Skills could also be their ability to shoot baskets, to make free throws, right? That's a learned skill. It's something that you learn by practicing over and over and over again, as opposed to a strength, which could be, so for instance, one of the 34 strengths is focus. What focus would enable a basketball player to do is to actually, zone in when they're at the free throw line so that they can then capitalize on the strength or the skill that they've built in terms of shooting baskets. But without that ability to focus in and zone in and focus only on the basket, forget about the crowd, forget about the pressure, they may not be as good at making free throw shots. So that's an example of the difference between strength and skill. Perhaps another one might be if you think about giving a presentation. So I can certainly teach myself a skill around how to create a visually appealing presentation. I can learn the software, I can learn some of the techniques, I can learn about what works and what doesn't, and I can teach myself the skill of creating the visually appealing presentation. But then where the strength comes in is for those people that have the communication talents and the ability to tell a really good story. I'm sure you've all come across people in your lives, whether it be a professor or a boss or a speaker that you've had the opportunity to hear, that just has a way of telling a story that connects with the audience or that really reels you in. And that's the talent side of this. That's the strength side of this. So hopefully that helps you see a little bit about the difference between strengths versus skills. Again, strengths are more innate. Skills are something that you learn and that you can build with practice. Now, why do we care about knowing our strengths? And I love this quote as well. Knowing your superpower changes everything. Because once you know what you're good at, one, it builds your confidence. I had a conversation with a student last night who is taking a course I'm teaching about strengths. And she said, I've always thought that these things that I did, I've never realized they were strengths. I always thought that they were something that I should try to change because it wasn't the way necessarily that everybody else did it. And she said, in taking this course, it's made me realize not only is it a strength, but it's something that really makes me stand out. And it has given her a level of confidence to approach her job search, to approach her career exploration in a totally different way than what she was doing before. I mean, it was so rewarding to hear her say, since taking this course, I've actually stopped trying to compare myself as much. And so that's super exciting. And that's kind of what knowing your strengths and knowing your superpower can do for you. It gives you a completely different perspective. So let's talk about, especially if you haven't taken the assessment, as many of you haven't, how do you spot your strengths? And you'll find that in the Gallup research, there are, that life is filled with a lot of different clues to identifying your talents. And one of the things you can do is you can look at past successes to get a sense of when you have been operating in what I'll call the strengths zone. But they also highlight 5 clues to talent or clues to strength that can help you see when you are doing something that is in line with your natural ways of thinking, being, doing, behaving. And that's what these 5 clues are on the screen. So let's talk about each one of them. The first one is yearning. And so this happens if you think about an activity or a task that you are just naturally drawn to. It gives you energy. It makes you think, I have to do that. As opposed to those, the alternative to this is what activities are really frustrating or really drain you of energy. And so when you start noticing the difference in those, when you start to paying attention to those tasks that you're naturally drawn to, um, then that is usually a sign that your strengths are at work. So you really want to pay attention. So the second clue to talent is called rapid learning. And these are activities or tasks that you pick up really quickly. Like basically you don't even have to try. You're just able to pick up these activities, pick up these tasks, as opposed to other things where it might take longer for you to master, even when you know all the steps. So pay attention to those moments when you pick something up and you're thinking, wow, okay, that was pretty easy. The third clue to spotting your strengths is flow. And what flow means, you've probably heard of a state of flow. It's basically when you really just lose track of time. Maybe you're doing something and all of a sudden 2 hours has gone by and you're thinking, wow, how did that happen? Again, generally a good sign that your talents are at play, that your strengths are being activated, and that you're doing something that is innately, it resonates with you innately. The fourth clue to talent is glimpses of excellence. This can sometimes be hard to spot on your own. It's basically, when you have those moments of looking back at something and saying, gosh, wow, how did I do that? But it can be almost subconscious. And so sometimes with glimpses of excellence, it is easier to think about what have others told you that you're good at? Like when has someone come up to you and said, oh my gosh, that was the most amazing whatever it is, presentation. That document that you wrote was so well crafted and it really pulled me in. Or that analysis you did, I never would have thought to look at it that way. So think about the things that others tell you that you're really good at. That's really what the glimpses of excellence are. And then the fifth clue to talent is satisfaction. So thinking about the activities or tasks that really give you a kick as you're doing them, and you think to yourself, "Gosh, when can I do that again? Because that was really satisfying, and I really just enjoyed that." Whether it's giving a presentation, or it could be doing research, or it could be interviewing people, it could be just about anything, but watching out for those moments when you really think, gosh, I want to do that again. So these are, again, just 5 what we call clues to strength or clues to talent that help you start to pay attention. You can, as you're going through your days, as you're going through your work, just start to pay attention to when you experience any of these feelings or any of these emotions, and think about exactly what you're doing, so that you can start to pay attention to the different strengths that you're using every time you experience these moments. Okay, so some other things that you can do to really think about how to spot your strengths. Here are a few things that you can, some reflections that you can do. So if you think back and identify some times in your life when you were at your very best, maybe you were at, peak performance. Maybe you got an A, like breezed through a class. Maybe you had, you got a bonus at work because someone noticed how good you did at something. Maybe you got a promotion. Maybe it was the result of an interview, but identify some times in your life when you feel like you were at your very best, and think about, what were you doing and how did you feel? So that's one way, that's one reflection that you can do to start thinking about what your strengths are. A second thing is to think about what is the best job you ever had, or the best project you ever worked on. And again, think about, what exactly were you doing? Did it involve people, or were you working on your own? Did it involve writing? Did it involve speaking? Did it involve analyzing data. Think about those jobs, those projects, what exactly you were doing, what skills were you using. And again, these can be clues to the strengths and a way to spot your strengths showing up. And you're doing all of this as a reminder, because if you can understand what your strengths are, then you can organize your work in a way that taps into those strengths. It doesn't mean you can get rid of everything that you don't like doing or everything that you're not good at doing, but it starts to give you an idea about how you might be able to reorganize some of what you do. So another reflection that you can do is to identify one of your most fulfilling experiences. Maybe it's that you ran a marathon. Maybe it's that you moved to a city where you didn't know anyone. Maybe it's that you trained your dog to do all kinds of different tricks, but just something that's really fulfilling to you. And think about what made it so fulfilling and how do you get that feeling again? What really gave you that emotional reaction, and how do you get it again? And then the last reflection that I'll give you as a prompt is to think about what you most enjoy. So, what about it do you enjoy? And again, I'll go back to thinking about the best job or project. You want to look at all different things. Did you enjoy it because it was with people or because it was alone? Did you enjoy it because there was very clear direction given, or maybe you enjoyed it because it was so ambiguous? Maybe you enjoy it because there was a definite start and end date to it. Maybe you enjoyed it because it gave you the ability to be really creative at something. But identify those things that you most enjoy doing and what about it you enjoy. So again, you can do these in conjunction. If you go back to the five clues to talent, and you keep those in mind, maybe you have this slide in front of you. We'll share this deck afterwards. And you do this reflection, thinking about those times in your life when you were at your very best, when it was the best job you ever had or the best project you ever worked on, one of your most fulfilling experiences, what you enjoy doing. And as you'll see, you're actually connecting. These reflections are prompting you to connect it with those 5 clues to strength and helping you think about those things that come up for you. So, strategies to build and apply your strengths. What's really key here is recognizing when and how your strengths show up. And that's what the last 2 slides were about, was really training yourself to recognize when your strengths are showing up and how they're showing up, so that you can intentionally and consciously apply your strengths to maybe do things in a different way, to maybe do things in a way that is more in line with your strengths, which again gives you the opportunity to be more engaged, because the more that we're using our strengths, the more engaged we feel in our work, in our organizations, in our environments. So look for opportunities to observe how you use your strengths in your daily life. Pay attention to them like in action, as it says here. So look for that. Look for opportunities to post your strengths someplace where you will see them regularly, right? Maybe it's that you put a Post-it note above your computer screen that you look at on a regular basis. So this is obviously, if you have already done the assessment, you can do this and you have specifically identified those strengths, but it could be that you just put a list up to remind you to start to pay attention to, oh, that was something that I really enjoyed, or that's something that I really got a lot of energy from, or that's something that I definitely want to do again. Put that list somewhere where you're going to see it and you're going to remember to keep paying attention. Um, it could be that you concentrate on one specific strength and you say, gosh, I really want to grow this one. So for instance, if I wanted to focus on really looking at how do I strengthen my ideation talents, I am going to look for projects and opportunities where I have the opportunity to think outside of the box, where I have the opportunity to brainstorm, where I have the opportunity to be creative in whatever way that means to you. Because keep in mind too that strengths are individually defined in a lot of different ways. They're going to show up differently for me than they're going to show up for you. So, for instance, for me, a lot of my ideation talents show up as my ability to create a space for others to be creative versus me necessarily being creative myself. So again, strengths are very individual and they're also going to be influenced by your other strengths. But you can really decide that you want to grow one in particular and look at ways, projects that you can take on, hobbies that you can pick up, organizations, maybe volunteer efforts that you can become a part of that will help you build those. For every success you have, maybe you successfully complete a project, um, maybe you successfully change a habit, maybe you um, are successful in connecting with a friend or coworker. But for every success you have, try to identify what strengths made it possible. Again, the more that you're doing this, the more that you build your recognition, the more that you identify how your strengths are showing up, you can very intentionally and consciously apply them to other areas. And then similarly, for any upcoming goal or for any upcoming project that you have, plan how you will actively use one or two of your strengths to achieve that goal or to achieve that project. Think about, if my goal is about having a really successful transition from one job to another, I am going to engage my relator talents so that I can connect with new people at my new organization, so I can really build some of those relationships and build my familiarity with the people and the organization. So maybe I'll tap into my relator strengths, and I might also tap into my strategic strengths to start to paint a picture of what's really important in this new job and start thinking about how do things fit together? How do the strategies fit together? How do the goals fit together? So for any goal or project that you have, you can really intentionally think about what are the one or two strengths that are going to help me achieve that. So that's kind of the basics. In closing, I just want to share, this is again from Gallup, and they say that focused attention creates openings for understanding ourselves, our situation, and the way forward. And so this is strengths is as much about our awareness and our attention as anything else. The more that we can build our awareness, the more that we can build our appreciation, the better that we're able to engage. So before I stop, I do want to share a couple other things with you about the Career Center. So different things that the Career Center can do for you in case you're not aware. And as I share these, I would also ask that I'm going to launch a poll in a minute. So just be ready for that to come in terms of some feedback. But going back, sorry, let me see if I can go back to what the Career Center can do for you. There's drop-in career coaching. There's virtual appointments with all of our career community advisors. There's an email resume review that you all have access to. You can see all of this on our website, as well as access to our career library with 50 different handouts and videos that can give you access to information anytime, anywhere, whenever you need it. Handshake is the platform that many of you are familiar with, where you can make an appointment, where you can see what other events are coming up. You can find jobs and internships. And then there's the Alumni Sharing Knowledge Program, where you can connect with alumni for informational interviews, for practice interviews, and connect with people who, fellow alumni, that have been in your shoes. Then I mentioned the events again that you can see on Handshake. One of the ones that's coming up is a Career Skills Lab. These are 30-minute workshops. Our skills labs are 30 minutes. They offer tactical advice for upskilling wherever you are in your career journey. So the one that's coming up is an Intro to Agile Project Management. So you may want to check that out. And then I mentioned our career library, which you can see a bit about here. And right now I'm going to go ahead and launch the second poll. If you would, I would really appreciate it if you would just take a couple minutes right now to complete this poll. It gives us some feedback and lets us know what we're doing well, what's worked, what hasn't. And so just take a couple minutes to do that. While you're doing that, I will also invite, I'm going to quit sharing my screen. And I'm also going to invite any questions that you might have. I'm happy to answer any questions. Happy to point you to other resources if you're looking for different resources around strengths. But happy to take any questions. You can either unmute yourself and ask, or feel free to drop them in the chat. We also welcome any suggestions that you have on other topics that you may want to see us cover in these master classes. So if there are topic ideas, feel free to share those in the chat as well. But I really appreciate you joining us this evening. Brenda is asking, can we get slides? Yes, you can get slides. We will share these with everyone who registered, and we will also share a recording of the event. So yes, and again, I'll stick around for a couple minutes. If you do have any questions, happy to answer them. If you don't have any questions, then I hope you have a wonderful evening. And I appreciate you all doing the event checkout. We really appreciate your feedback. We do take it to heart, and we do use your feedback in order to make adjustments to our programming, to things that we're doing. So we really appreciate that. So a couple of questions. Is there a limit on how many career coaching sessions that you can participate in as alumni? There is not. So you are welcome to meet with any of the career advisors. You can meet with anyone in any community. You are not restricted. Again, you can make those appointments on Handshake, or you can call our office to set up an appointment. We are still answering the phone in this virtual environment. So you can meet with a career advisor as often as is helpful for you. There's another question about whether or not there is a charge to take the strengths assessment. There is. I believe that the top 5 assessment, I think it's under $20. If you want to get your full 34, so the full profile, I think that one is closer to $45. And it gives you access to a whole bunch of resources on Gallup's site. It's going to not only tell you your top talents, it's going to explain a lot about them. It's going to give you strategies and tactics for how to build them. So it's a lot of different resources beyond just the assessment and the report. If you just Google, I should have had that link ready, but if you just Google Gallup Clifton Strengths Assessment, you'll be able to find that. Oh, thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate you putting that link in the chat. Anyone else? Any other questions this evening? Okay. Then everybody have a great evening. I appreciate you joining us. And we look forward to welcoming you back to other events in the future. Again, feel free to reach out anytime to share your thoughts on topics and enjoy the hopefully springtime like weather. I know that we're having that in Chicago. So get out and enjoy the rest of your evening. All right, bye everyone.